Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Talia Abramowitz, founder and managing partner at Deloitte Ventures. Talia, welcome.
Thank you, Nicholas, for having me. Delighted to be here.
I'm very glad to have you. And I think because you just started recently, there's a lot of design decisions and the why that's fresh in your mind. So we're going to spend a lot of time on that. But maybe first, if you can share your journey into corporate venturing.
Yeah, sure. I guess my journey is a non-traditional one, and I fell into ventures, but I'll take you back. I've been with Deloitte Canada, about 20 years. My background is in M&A, got really passionate about technology, also really passionate about operations. I come from a family of serial entrepreneurs, more out of necessity, nothing really sexy or innovative. They were retail stores, but nevertheless, I worked in those stores from the age of 7, and so did my whole family. And so I always had this entrepreneurial gene in me. And while I was working at Deloitte, I always had a business case on the side about the company that I was going to start. And naturally, when you're doing M&A, you get soaked up into a project and you're working 100 hours a week to be an entrepreneur within Deloitte. And so I took on a role as chief operating officer of our financial advisory business. In my 20s, it was a $200 million business at the time, and I got to run and manage that business. And so really satiated my hunger for running an enterprise. And then after that, I co-founded the artificial intelligence practice at Deloitte Canada called Omnia AI. We scaled that practice to about 500 people in 24 months. Just amazing. So got to ride the scaling journey as well. And then we agreed that once we scaled that business, we would seed it back to one of our existing businesses. And so we did that. And I was looking for my next adventure, both within and outside the firm. And the CEO of Deloitte Canada tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, we've been talking about this venturing thing for a couple decades now. Could you maybe spend a few months digging into it and making a recommendation, working with our executive leadership team on what this would look like if we do it, should we do it, et cetera, et cetera." And so I just immersed myself into this ecosystem and learned everything that I could. It was much less a desktop study and much more involved, and got super excited and passionate about it. And needless to say, the recommendation was we should proceed. And here we are. So today I manage that fund, and it's a $150 million fund that we launched in January of 2022. So we're about 2 years into this journey.
And this morning I saw a LinkedIn post from you showing that you're on the list for Canada CVCs.
Yes, the Corporate Venture Capital Institute for Canada launches a report every year on the activity that happens in Canada. And so they've got league tables for different categories of VCs. And yeah, we're, I think, number 4 on the league table of corporate VCs and pension funds in terms of activity, which is wonderful to see 2 years in.
Very nice. You say you've been immersing yourself, so maybe you could share with the audience who are thinking about starting a corporate VC, what materials, resources did you find the most valuable to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it was a different market at the time that I was assessing it. I was assessing it from the standpoint of, could we stand out in a market where deals are being done really quickly, where there's sort of tons of capital, what was going to be our differentiating proposition. But what I found really valuable actually was the naysayers and getting really familiar with why corporate venture doesn't work so that you could really build for success. I spent some time with Josh Lerner at Harvard, following a review of his piece to just better understand what he's seen work since then, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that was the most informative to me in terms of standing one up.
Yeah, I think that's a really good starting point because there are so many pitfalls and so many bad practices. If you're at least aware of them and you plan to avoid them, you're already doing better than most. What I like about your journey is that if I looked at your LinkedIn, it looks like you've been in the same company all your life or your career, but actually you've had multiple entrepreneurial steps inside. Mm-hmm. Another part of your journey, or in a way, a very important background and discipline for a venture capital firm is your experience on valuations. And of course, it was from M&A, which is probably more late stage and early stage. But can you talk about how much of that is helping and how much of that could be filters? You have these filters of valuations probably from late stage, but when you look at early stage, maybe some unlearning is needed.
It was hard for me to wrap my head around the valuations in venture because it is very different from what you're taught on a free cash flow basis. There are no cash flows here. They're negative cash flows, and yet still they're worth a lot of money. And so it's getting more reasonable. And obviously, the process is quite a bit different. I think capital efficiency is like one of the most important things. I'm like super glad to see a return to fundamentals and a good use of capital by founders versus what we saw 18 months ago, which was growth at all costs. Frankly, it was, I think, irresponsible at times.
I think capital efficiency is also very important for dilution moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
One thing you said, which I really like, is when the CEO approached you, the first word you said was about how can we differentiate? Can you share about what was your initial idea of differentiation and how you ended up with?
So we went out really to market at the time and spoke with a lot of companies to understand what they thought of Deloitte. Are you interested in Deloitte as an investor? Like how they think about corporate venture capital in Canada? Do we really add value? Do we hold you back and just want to buy you at the end? And we found that overwhelmingly there was a very positive reaction to Deloitte. And I think that's mainly because we partner with a lot of technology companies. A lot of them are later stage technology companies, but I was even surprised to learn that almost 50% of our revenue in Canada is what we define as technology enabled. And so that includes services or solutions that we offer to companies that include the provision of a third-party tech vendor as part of that solution. And so more and more, there's this need to integrate earlier stage innovative solutions so that we can differentiate and provide awesome solutions to our clients' increasingly complicated problems. We unlock all of corporate Canada. And so it's a distribution angle that just has an amplification effect that companies just understood. They honestly didn't need to be told or taught or anything about it. It was like, you could get us into all your clients. I was like, yeah, we could. So that is the differentiator that the market saw. And it's true.
Now, of course, this is a planned differentiation and it's nearly obvious it could be very valuable to the portfolio companies. But then there's probably a lot of design decisions and execution to deliver on that superpower, on that promise of distribution to markets, using it inside, expertise. How have you designed Deloitte Ventures to deliver on that promised differentiation?
I guess I expected, and to your earlier point, like Deloitte partners are inherently investors in our fund. And so I expected that they would have a vested interest in making our portfolio companies succeed. The reality is we're a minority investor, and then they're within 550 partners, a minority of that, right?
Yep.
And so the direct impact to a partner is quite limited. And that's not to say that changes anything. And so we know what's out there in the market. We know where there are gaps. And so we leverage subject matter experts or adventurers to help us in the diligence process. And what we're trying to prove in that diligence process is that this company is one of the top 3 companies for this particular use case. And when you can answer that question, then you have a 1 in 3 chance of, should that opportunity arise, being brought to their client. And so you start to create this inherent stickiness because they just love the tech and it's solving a problem for their clients. And now we've all together found the solution. And so that should create the flywheel on its own. And we're seeing that absolutely does work.
I love it. And also, when you look for these startups, you already know there is a pain point, there is a need, there is a market for it. So you already come with true insights about product market fit gap. And I love the adventurers term. So why did you choose adventurers?
I don't know. It just came to us. I thought it was really cute and cheeky, and we actually just put out a newsletter to our community as the first one, and we did it for Valentine's Day, and we called it "We Love Adventurers." We just got to continue tipping and nodding our hat to the broader Deloitte that is really enabling what we do here today, right? Without our partners being engaged, we wouldn't be able to live up to our value creation promise, which then ruins our reputation in getting into deal flow and partnerships in the market, namely 6 verticals. So we focus our investing efforts in fintech, cybersecurity, climate and sustainability, the future of work, data and AI, and health tech. And so we've created kind of adventurer champions for each of those verticals. And we meet at a different cadence. Some meet biweekly, some meet quarterly. We're trying to offer them value as well so that we continue to create that stickiness. Trying much more of a pull approach. We're trying to get them to pull us in versus us pushing our portfolio companies.
That's very nice. And here I feel like there is maybe some tips you can share about keeping this initial interest to help and nurture it.
Yeah. Going back to just the thesis of why we started this, obviously there's a financial need here, but we talked about how this contributes to our strategy of finding new and innovative partnerships. We talked about how this fuels our clients by bringing them the latest and greatest. And then people was a big thing. Venture 2 years ago when we launched this, still today, maybe less than it was 2 years ago, but super sexy, right? And everybody was like, oh, Deloitte Ventures, I want to be part of this. Reality is we're 5 people, but we wanted to live up to our promise of attracting and retaining talent within the firm. And there's many ways to do that. And so the one I talked to you about is the adventurers and keeping people in the loop is one. The other is involving them in events. We're now doing, we call it bite-sized adventure programs where we have drop-ins. We're going around the country and we're doing 1.5-hour sessions on how we invest. And so we offer that. We're also exploring ways we can potentially second people to our portfolio companies. So portfolio companies are one of them is looking to scale rapidly, wants to hire 100 engineers. We've got a massive pool of engineers at Deloitte, right? And so is there a way where we can second people to them for a certain period of time as they get through their build cycle? And so there's different models like that to be able to pull on and really amplify the impact that we can have with our people at Deloitte beyond sort of the 5 that work in the team. And we're continuing to find new ideas.
Actually, so the secondment, we looked at it at TDK Ventures, but it hasn't yet worked out. And so I'm very interested to know how you managed to make it work. And here the challenge is we don't want to charge the portfolio companies for that secondment, but at the same time, these people are expert and very busy on other projects. And then there is IP consideration. There is concerns about just coming for maybe 20 hours and then it's not enough. How do you manage to structure the secondment in a way that's valuable for Deloitte and is valuable for the portfolio companies?
Yeah, and so we haven't actually done one yet on a secondment basis, but yeah, it's got to be a win for everybody. And so we would at least cover costs would be where I would say would be at least a good starting point to engage our people. So we don't provide Deloitte professional services for free, right? And what we do at Deloitte, because our partner is much like a law firm where you have billable hours, right? And so to get a partner to spend 5 hours or maybe an ongoing mentorship or whatever with a portfolio company is taking time away from where they could bill. And so we have created as part of our operating budget an ability to fund internal time. And so we pay them. And so it's the reality is, the funny thing is, while we have budgeted for this 2 years in a row, a fairly decent number, I think one time I was actually asked for it. Our partners are delighted by spending time with these companies and feeling the impact and the purpose and the meaning behind their advice and their work in a very different way than serving the largest companies in Canada, right? Which is where they spend most of their time. So
Yeah.
partners actually really enjoy it,
Yeah.
right? And we're engaging our people in a different way that just truly excites them.
To me, it is a sign that you are building champions inside the mothership. Your partners are already working with the entrepreneurs anyway as part of their jobs, so they may have more appreciations. But for bigger companies where people are not exposed to startups, there's really a mismatch sometimes between expectations of the entrepreneurs and the mothership. But even then, I'm sure you also have to manage that. So how do you manage both the expectations from the entrepreneurs and still setting the expectations with your partners?
Yeah, and I can't claim to have nailed this yet. We're obviously still learning. I would say with the founders, I'm very transparent. I just believe in full transparency, and our whole team really lives by that. And part of why we focus where we focus, which is Series A and B stage funding rounds, is because it is too early at the seed stage or pre-seed stage when you don't have product market fit. And so we didn't want to create that friction. And that's not to say that the other stuff's impossible. It just takes a lot of conviction and a lot of investment and a lot of time from a partner or a group of partners who believe in a particular area. And they also have to, not just they believe, they have to get approval effectively from their leaders to forego generating X million dollars of revenue over here in hopes of building something over here. Effectively, they're trying to get carriage for being an entrepreneur within Deloitte. That doesn't always happen.
I think you have a very good plan to leverage your superpower. And as you deliver it, I think the entrepreneurs are going to love it and talk to other entrepreneurs. So I can see how this is going to be like a snowball, keeps improving and keeps doing better. And at that point, even investing early stage is okay because they know that when they are ready, you can deploy that superpower. I want to go back a bit to the time where, so the CEO tapped your shoulder and said, please check if it makes sense to do a CVC. Can you remember how you pitched it in a way that set the right expectations across Deloitte? Can you maybe share a bit of the inside of how you proposed it?
Yeah, it was fluid. So I came back, it was more of a working group. I came back and kept presenting my findings to this executive leadership team, I think probably about 3 times. Should have been 2, and we were going to be off to the board to get approval. But I realized in that second meeting, there was a misalignment of the why. You had a few people in the room talking about, we're going to find the next snowflake and we're going to have a preferred alliance relationship and we're going to generate revenue working with these, right? That was the prize, was the revenue we were going to generate in selling with these companies. And to me, and in all the work that I had done, that was not the prize. It takes a really long time just to get that up the maturity curve to where that is a material revenue number. It was to build resilience for our firm. So we're a professional services firm today. This is about hedging against disruption, both of our core business and of our clients' core business, while staying closer to technology and building a profit pool from investing. What we don't want is some little 3 people over there doing some venture investing, and maybe every couple of years they kick out $5 or $10 million in the grand scheme of Deloitte Canada. That's not material.
Yep.
Right? We want the partners, when we have a home run, we want to be able to, earnings that year are materially different because of what happened in ventures. And then you start stacking funds on top of each other, and you have this really material, almost 7th business in our firm that is ventures. And so that's the vision for what we are to become, while also along the way, while you're in the bottom of the J curve and forever, but while you're not producing financial returns, you're going to produce a ton of strategic value.
And I think there's a golden nugget you're sharing, which is statistically for a VC firm, it takes 7 years to return a fund if they ever return a fund.
Yeah.
So you have to show the value before that.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I didn't want, and I think one of the criticisms you've probably heard of corporate ventures, the ones that are solely strategic, it's hard to measure some of this strategic value, right?
Yeah.
And we've created a scorecard that has a bajillion things, and so we're doing our best at measuring and quantifying each of those different values. But so it's a scorecard that has 5 pillars. It's got strategy and insights. I think it's got brand and network and ecosystem, financial, which includes in the early days revenue, and in the later days, obviously, returns. It's got client impact, it's our diversity and inclusion scores. Are we doing anything on climate, etc.? And each year, the percentages in each of the categories will change. Like as you get to the later years of the fund, the financial quadrant will be a material percentage.
Okay, it's very thoughtful. I'm glad you shared.
Hmm.
I also like the fact that one of the pillars is societal impact. How did you go about sharing insights and tracking the impact of sharing these insights?
The tracking of the sharing of insights is easy in terms of like the number of thesis papers produced. But the reality is you're sharing insights every day that are really hard to measure, which is why I think when you anchor on strategic value, really hard to identify all of it. What we have done through this scorecard, I think we have measures of it along the way. And so then on the client side, we've got opportunities enabled. And so we have in our CRM as a firm, we have an ability to tag things to Deloitte Ventures. Deloitte Ventures has contributed to the proposal. Deloitte Ventures provided you with this client, right? We do a lot of grant and incentive tax work, and we've provided them with a huge funnel of potential clients. And so tracking the revenue opportunity and then conversion of that is another way that we do it. So it's easy to run, right? Like twice a year, we just pull CRM with everything that has the tag, and you have the numbers.
Okay, then I've learned something that I should discuss internally with TDK, which also is maybe one thing which I think you haven't said, so I need to ask, which you have these 6 portfolio companies, which clearly you're introducing at the right time with your partners. But you're going to see startups you decide not to invest for one reason or another, but you still believe could be valuable to your own clients. Is that the value creation lead that's also introducing these startups you don't invest in, or how do you handle these introductions?
It's typically one of the lead investors that will do it. So they know, again, within the verticals that we invest in, they've got those communities of practice. And so we just we send it to any of the leaders in that practice and said, hey, we heard you're interested in this or that, came across this company. Do you want to meet them? And they say yes or no. If they say yes, we just introduce them via email, and we just walk away from that typically.
Mm-hmm. But what's nice with your system is even if you don't track, it's going to be tracked on the CRM tool of Deloitte because you're tagged on the introduction to start.
Correct.
Very nice. Now let's talk about Deloitte Ventures. What are you excited to invest next? For the entrepreneurs who are listening, what it is you plan to invest in the next 12 to 18 months?
What are we excited about investing in? Fintech is a bit dicey right now, but there's still so much disruption and digitization of that whole area that I think is really exciting. I think InsurTech is a really hot space. I think wealth tech, the way we do private banking in Canada or wealth management is like archaic, beyond archaic. And so I think that's a really huge opportunity. Climate and sustainability, of course, lots of really exciting innovations and advancements happening there. We have not yet done a direct investment in any climate or sustainability. Generative AI goes without saying. We invested in a wonderful company. That was one of the seed stage investments we had to pivot for, because by the time it got to the A, it would probably be too expensive for us. And so we co-invested with NVIDIA, Google's AI fund, and Thomson Reuters into that company, and are very excited about what they're going to accomplish.
Very nice. My last question to you, from everything you've learned, what would you tell Talia when you started the project of building a CVC?
I would say the most important learning for, I think, anybody starting a CVC is that alignment piece at the beginning. We didn't have to learn from failure, thankfully, but I think if we didn't push on that and we didn't have the clarity that we had today, it would be a different result for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Talia. You gave us many golden nuggets, and I really like your candid and very open sharing of your learnings. Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure. Look forward to connecting soon. Bye for now.